Chapter 15, Part 1, Attachments. As the months unfolded, Jasmine and I embarked on a nomadic dance across America's landscapes. Her surgical expertise had become so coveted that her medical agent could secure placements at any hospital in the country, even for brief 3-month rotations. We chased horizons together, first to the crystalline shores of Lake Tahoe, then to the rolling vineyards of Ukiah, and finally to the fog-kissed hills of San Francisco, each city a potential canvas for our shared future. During this period, I finally had enough money to get braces, a necessary step before the dental crowns that would complete my full mouth transformation. Our days bloomed with the intoxicating sweetness of new love, wandering unfamiliar streets hand in hand, discovering hidden cafes, making love in hotel rooms with views of foreign skylines. Yet beneath this romantic veneer, fault lines were forming. Jasmine's other business ventures constantly pulled her away, leaving me stranded in these beautiful but alien cities, watching her disappear into airports with increasing frequency. For the first time in any relationship I ever had, we began to fight. Her ego towered above mine in sheer magnitude, yet mine was possessed of particularly insidious quality in its unshakable need to be right. This, I would later understand, is a cunning test from the ego, revealing exactly where you stand in your spiritual development through the heat of conflict. Meanwhile, the mental anguish and body tremors continued, invisible earthquakes I carefully concealed from her. Our dynamic grew increasingly toxic, yet I found myself unable to leave. I had developed what I now recognize as an attachment to the safety she provided, a psychological umbilical cord that kept me tethered even as everything else crumbled. Even in our worst moments, even as harsh words flew between us like shrapnel, she remained my shelter from the storm of my own unraveling mind. I was hopelessly attached to her, to the illusion of safety she provided, and to my desperate need to control the uncontrollable. What I didn't realize then was that I was getting a masterclass in humanity's oldest spiritual lesson. Throughout human history, spiritual traditions from every corner of the world have recognized and mapped the invisible chains of attachment that bind us to suffering. But what exactly is attachment? And why does every wisdom tradition warn against it with such urgency? Attachment is not love. It is love's shadow. It is the desperate clinging that says, I cannot be whole without this person, thing, or experience. Attachment transforms natural preferences into psychological prisons, turning the things we cherish into sources of constant anxiety and fear. There are an infinite number of things we can attach to, but Lester Levenson distilled most of them into what he called AGFLAP, AGFLAP, an acronym representing 6 core negative emotional states and the attachments we have to them: apathy, grief, fear, lust, anger, and pride. Levinson identified these emotions as the primary obstacles that keep people in a low state of consciousness and limit their well-being and happiness. There are dozens of subattachments under each category in AGFLAP, and it's worth exploring this relatively exhaustive list online to see precisely what needs to be let go of. And yet, life has a funny way of showing us how attachment feels in the body. The tightness in the chest when someone threatens our position, the knot in the stomach when plans don't unfold as expected, the desperation that arises when we imagine losing what we think defines us. Some attachments are obvious and brutal in their honesty, are clinging to material wealth, social status, physical appearance, and romantic relationships. These attachments announce themselves through our jealousy when others have what we want, our panic when we risk losing what we have, and our constant comparison of our lives to others' highlight reels. But the subtle attachments are the real masters of deception. We attach to our own thoughts as if they were sacred scriptures rather than random neural firings. We attach to our spiritual identity, becoming proud of our humility, competitive about our compassion. We attach to our victim stories, wearing our wounds like badges of honor that give us permission to remain small. Most widely of all, we can even attach to being unattached, turning detachment itself into another form of spiritual materialism. Dillulo deepens this understanding by revealing that attachment extends far beyond external things. It includes our identification with thoughts, emotions, and even spiritual experiences themselves. We become attached to being the spiritual one, or the wounded one, or the successful one. We cling to our stories about ourselves as if they were life rafts in an ocean of uncertainty. He teaches that suffering arises not from emotions or thoughts themselves, but from our resistance and clinging to them. Imagine holding a slightly hot coal in your hand. The pain comes not from the coal's existence, but from your refusal to let go. As he explains, peace is not the absence of anger, sadness, or discord. It is full acceptance of these and of all experiences with no resistance whatsoever. The question then becomes, how do we recognize when these invisible chains are binding us? Our triggers tell us something, and every time you feel any AGFLAP, that is a sign that more work needs to be done. Triggers and emotions are gifts, feedback mechanisms from the universe to show us where we stand on the scorecard to enlightenment. And that is how all of my masters treated them. When they feel anger, worry, envy, or even react, trying to prove someone wrong, they almost always take note of it and immediately turn inward with curiosity rather than outward with blame. Instead of getting lost in the story of why they're justified in feeling this way, they ask themselves, what attachment is being threatened here? What am I trying to protect or control? They treat each emotional reaction like a smoke alarm going off, not something to be silenced or ignored, but a signal pointing to exactly where the fire is burning. I watched one mentor catch himself getting defensive during a conversation and literally pause mid sentence to say, "Excuse me, I just noticed my ego trying to be right. Let me start over." Another would feel a wave of jealousy and immediately recognize it as information. Ah, I'm still attached to being seen as special. They understood that the goal isn't to never feel these emotions. That would be spiritual bypassing, but to use them as precise diagnostic tools that reveal the exact location of our remaining unconscious attachments. The most advanced practitioners I knew would actually thank their triggers, almost like greeting an old teacher who had shown up with another valuable lesson. They knew that every emotional charge was a breadcrumb leading them deeper into freedom, showing them exactly where their consciousness was, still imprisoned by the need for things to be different from what they are. Looking back, I can see exactly where I went wrong. This is the mature way to handle triggers and attachment, something I completely failed to do in my relationship with Jasmine. Rather than pointing fingers outward when emotion arose, the conscious approach is to immediately turn the spotlight inward. Every surge of anger, every pang of jealousy, every desperate need to be right becomes raw material for liberation rather than ammunition for blame. When I felt abandoned as she rushed toward another departure gate, instead of making her wrong for having other commitments, I could have asked myself, what attachment to security is being activated here? When our arguments escalated and I felt compelled to prove my point, instead of needing her to admit I was right, I could have recognized my ego's attachment to superiority and simply let it go. The mature spiritual seeker uses their emotional reactions as a GPS system, pointing directly toward their unconscious attachments, while the unconscious person uses those same reactions to build a case against the world. But knowing how to work with attachment and actually doing it are worlds apart. This acceptance is radical because it asks us to embrace what the mind considers unacceptable. It invites us to love our anger without feeding it, to acknowledge our sadness without drowning in it, to witness our fear without being paralyzed by it. I was told time and time again by my mentors to give unconditional love to my triggers, fears, and attachments. This is a mental exercise in the beginning until we start operating more from the heart with time and practice. As the Dalai Lama said, love is an activity, not a passive effect. It is a love in action. What the Dalai Lama was trying to say is that love requires conscious effort and active engagement rather than being a mere feeling or spontaneous emotion. He often emphasizes that love and compassion are practices that need to be cultivated intentionally. And that applies to loving our low vibrational states as well. The work happens in the heart, not the head. So when triggers arise, breathe into your chest and meet them with the same tenderness you'd offer a frightened child. The ultimate realization is that you are not the character in the story. This is perhaps the most radical shift in perspective that spiritual awakening offers. The recognition that you are not the actor in the play, but the awareness watching the play unfold. When anger arises, instead of thinking, I am angry, you begin to witness anger is rising in awareness. When heartbreak comes, rather than collapsing into, I'm broken, You observe the experience of heartbreak is moving through this space of consciousness. And the practical work of letting go of attachments happens in the body, not just the mind. Letting go is a somatic experience. When a disturbing thought or trigger rises in meditation or normal life, wherever it is appearing in my body, I somatically release it, imagining it as a bubble floating up and away, or smoke dissipating into the vastness of space. The key is feeling the actual physical sensation of release, the way your shoulders drop when you set down a heavy backpack, or how your jaw unclenches when you stop grinding your teeth. In my experience, it's not enough to think about letting go. The body must participate in the release. I might take a deep breath and literally exhale the thought out through my mouth, or feel it melting like ice in warm water. Sometimes it's as simple as sensing the tension that the thought creates in my chest or stomach, then consciously softening that area while imagining the collective energy dissolving. The key here is releasing all resistance as you do this. Imagine your resistance like an open wound, and what you fear, which is the uncomfortable sensation, the emotional pain, the release, is like alcohol being applied to it. Your instinct is to flinch, pull away, and brace yourself. But true release requires letting it happen fully. No resistance, none, not a shred. Allow the sensation to flow through you without judgment, without pushing it away. It might sting at first. It might feel unbearable. But by surrendering completely, you let the energy move and dissolve on its own. The deeper the non-resistance, the more profound the release. The somatic component is crucial because thoughts aren't just mental events. They create physical contractions, energetic holdings, muscular tensions that lock the experience in our system. When we learn to feel the thought in the body and then consciously release it through breath, visualization, or gentle movement, we're working with the complete human system rather than just trying to think our way out of thinking. Ask the divine to take it from you, Eva once told me. Then, and this is important, after it's released, ask for divine light to take its place. I know. These are just mere intellectual concepts until they're fully integrated through actual energetic shifts and expansions of consciousness and the heart chakra. Another chapter in the endless book of easier said than done. Yet every master began with concepts before they became lived wisdom. What I've shared here is meant as a starting point, giving you both the framework and the first steps toward your own practice. The subject of attachment has been explored extensively by many brilliant teachers, and two resources were particularly transformative for me, which were Dr. David Hawkins' Letting Go and Dillulo's Awake. It's your turn.